Nora stood frozen beside the fire pit in the backyard, her hands trembling. A sharp, acrid smell of burnt fabric clung to the air like a warning. What lay in front of her used to be her wedding dress, the one she'd saved for, dreamed about, and carefully chosen after months of planning. Now, it was nothing more than ashes and scorched lace. Her stepmother, Lydia, stood a few feet away with her arms crossed, watching with a twisted smirk. "You think you're so much better than me," Lydia said, her voice laced with venom. "Let's see how perfect your little fairy tale wedding is now." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked back inside the house. Nora stood there, numb, her heart sinking lower with each breath. This time, Lydia had gone too far. Lydia had been in Nora's life since she was 15, stepping in after Nora's mother passed away. At first, Nora had tried to welcome her, clinging to the hope that she could bring back some warmth to their broken family. But it didn't take long to realize Lydia wasn't interested in playing the role of mother or even friend. She saw Nora as a nuisance, a threat, and a reminder of everything her father had before her. Over the years, she chipped away at Nora's self-worth with biting remarks, cold silences, and schemes that always left Nora feeling small. But this, burning the dress, was cruel on another level. Nora had worked extra shifts, missed birthdays and gatherings, all to afford that dress. It was simple, not designer, but it was hers. And now it was gone. Tears welled in Nora's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of Lydia. That's what she wanted, a breakdown, a scene, something to gloat over. Instead, Nora turned away from the fire pit and walked inside, her expression blank, but her thoughts spinning. She wouldn't scream. She wouldn't cry. But she would fight. If Lydia thought this was the end of the story, she was wrong. It was only the beginning. The next few days were quiet in the house, almost eerily so. Nora moved through her routines with a strange calmness. She cleaned the kitchen while humming softly, arranged flowers in the hallway, and even offered Lydia a smile when they crossed paths. It wasn't fake, it was strategic. Lydia, used to explosions and emotional fallout, seemed confused. Her eyes narrowed, watching Nora closely, waiting for the tantrum that never came. "You're awfully cheerful for someone who just lost her wedding dress," Lydia muttered one morning over coffee. Nora just shrugged. "It was just a dress," she replied, then walked away. But inside she was boiling. Every calm breath she took was fuel for the storm she was preparing. She wasn't just going to recover. She was going to rise. Nora's first mission was the dress. She returned to the boutique where she had bought it, clutching onto hope that maybe, just maybe, they had another one. The woman behind the counter looked heartbroken when she heard the story. "I'm so sorry," she said gently, "but that gown was discontinued last season. We don't carry it anymore." Nora thanked her and walked out slowly, her chest tight with disappointment. But then, standing on the sidewalk, she took a deep breath and wiped her tears away. "I'll find something better," she whispered to herself. Over the next week, she dove headfirst into the search, bridal shops, online stores, secondhand sites. Finally, she saw it, a dress that felt like it was made just for her. It wasn't what she'd originally wanted, it was more, stronger, bolder, a symbol of everything she'd become. As the wedding day approached, Nora buried herself in planning. Each decision became an act of rebellion. The flowers, the music, the invitations, every detail screamed, "This is mine." Lydia hovered around, trying to poke holes in Nora's joy, but it no longer worked. "A garden wedding? You sure you want people sweating in the sun?" she'd ask with a smirk. Nora would nod with a smile. Absolutely. She wasn't just planning a ceremony. She was reclaiming her story. And Lydia? She was becoming just another chapter in a tale that no longer revolved around her. One evening, while sorting through an old box in her closet for decoration ideas, Nora stumbled upon something unexpected. It was tucked beneath a stack of childhood drawings and letters, an envelope labeled in her mother's handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a copy of her mother's will. She hadn't seen it in years, not since she was a grieving teenager unable to fully understand its meaning. Now, as she read line after line, her eyes widened. The house, the very one she and Lydia had been living in, was legally hers. Her mother had left it to her, not to her father, and certainly not to Lydia. Somehow, Lydia had gained control over it, making Nora believe she was just a guest under her roof. But the truth was right in front of her. The house wasn't Lydia's. It had never been. Nora sat on the floor, heart pounding, gripping the will like a lifeline. Everything started to click. The way Lydia acted like the queen of the castle. The way she treated Nora like an intruder. She had built her little empire on lies and manipulation. But now Nora had the proof. She didn't wait. The very next morning, she booked a consultation with a lawyer. She laid everything out, from the will to the way Lydia had treated her. The lawyer, calm and sharp-eyed, nodded as he read the document. "This is valid," he said firmly. "You're the rightful owner of that house. She has no legal claim to it." Nora couldn't breathe for a moment. Then it came, a wave of power, of clarity. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was taking back what was hers. What followed was tense and emotionally draining. Court documents were filed. Lydia was served. The house she had claimed for years was slipping through her fingers, and it showed. Her smug expressions faded. The sarcastic remarks dried up. She grew quiet, withdrawn, like a queen who had just realized her crown was fake. During one confrontation in the kitchen, Lydia hissed, "You ungrateful little brat." Nora looked her dead in the eye and replied, "I'm not ungrateful. I'm done." The court proceedings didn't take long. The judge, after reviewing the will and hearing the evidence, ruled in Nora's favor. The house legally belonged to her. Lydia was given 1 week to vacate. And just like that, the walls that had once closed in on Nora began to breathe again. The day Lydia left was quiet, almost unsettling. She didn't yell or slam doors like Nora expected. She simply packed her things in silence, her face pale and unreadable. Nora watched from the staircase, not out of cruelty, but closure. For the first time in years, she felt like she was standing on solid ground. When Lydia stepped out with the last suitcase, she turned to look at Nora one last time. There was no apology, no regret, just a tired bitterness that faded as the door shut behind her. Nora exhaled long and slow, then leaned her back against the wall. She was finally alone in her mother's house, her house. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful. Nora didn't waste a single day. She opened every window, letting fresh air flood the rooms. She scrubbed the kitchen tiles until they gleamed, painted over the dull walls, and took down every curtain that Lydia had once chosen. She filled the house with soft music, fresh flowers, and framed memories of her mother. In the backyard, the same backyard where her wedding dress had burned, she planted a garden. Roses, lilies, and sunflowers now bloomed where ashes had once lain. "For healing," she whispered as she placed the final seed. That space became her sanctuary, a symbol of transformation. It reminded her that even in destruction, something beautiful could grow. The wedding day arrived with golden sunshine and laughter. Friends and family filled the garden, their joy lighting up every corner of Nora's reclaimed world. Her father, quiet and a little emotional, took her hand before the ceremony. "She would have been proud of you," he said softly, referring to her mother. Nora smiled, her eyes misty. As the music began and she stepped into view, every head turned. She wore a gown that shimmered with hope and strength, one that told a story of survival. Her fiancé, Elias, stood waiting, tears in his eyes. As she walked toward him, Nora felt something lift. The weight of years passed. Lydia wasn't there, but freedom was. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Vows were exchanged with trembling voices and soft laughter. As Nora stood before Elias, slipping the ring onto his finger, she wasn't just pledging love. She was embracing peace, self-worth, and a future she had fought hard to claim. Applause followed their kiss, and the crowd erupted with joy. The garden sparkled under the sunlight, the air filled with music and warmth. Nora's heart felt full in a way it never had before. Every moment of that day felt like a reward, not just for surviving Lydia's cruelty, but for reclaiming her own narrative. During the reception, guests complimented the beauty of the space, unaware of its painful past. "This garden is stunning," one woman said. "It must have taken months to plan." Nora smiled gently. "It grew from something unexpected," she replied. In that moment, she realized the power of renewal. The past didn't vanish, it rooted her, but it didn't have to define her. As the sun began to set, lanterns flickered to life and laughter echoed under the stars. For the first time in years, Nora felt at home, not just in the house but in her own skin. A week after the wedding, Nora walked through each room, breathing in the quiet. She paused in her mother's old study, now transformed into a peaceful reading nook. On the desk sat the framed will, a reminder of truth, love, and the legacy her mother had left behind. She touched it gently, whispering, "Thank you." That simple document had changed her life. It had opened a door, not just to ownership, but to healing. Nora didn't need revenge. She had victory in peace, in reclaiming her space, and in learning that strength often blooms in silence. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. There were still bills to pay, responsibilities to juggle, and the occasional memory that stung like a splinter. But Nora faced it all with a new confidence. Elias supported her at every turn, reminding her daily of how proud he was. They hosted dinners in the garden, shared dreams late into the night, and slowly built the kind of life Nora had once only imagined. The shadows Lydia left behind eventually faded, not because they were forgotten, but because they were overpowered by light. Sometimes Lydia crossed Nora's mind, usually in passing, like a distant figure from an old storybook. Nora never reached out. She didn't need closure through conversation. She had found it in the quiet triumph of moving forward. The greatest revenge, she realized, wasn't anger. It was joy. It was standing tall in the home that was hers, laughing with friends, wearing her new wedding dress, and choosing love over resentment. On the first anniversary of her mother's death, Nora stood in the garden with Elias beside her. They lit a candle and placed it among the roses. "She gave me more than I ever understood," Nora said, her voice soft. "And somehow, even after she was gone, she helped me find my way back." Elias held her hand tighter. The wind stirred gently through the flowers, like a whisper of approval. The house became more than shelter. It became a home filled with light, growth, and laughter. Nora eventually opened a small floral business, run from the same garden where her dreams were once reduced to ash. It became known around town as a place of transformation. Brides came for bouquets, and Nora always smiled knowingly as they spoke of their dreams. She never told them the full story of her dress or her stepmother, but she didn't need to. Her resilience spoke through every bloom. Looking back, Nora could still see that moment by the fire pit clearly. The ash, the smirk, the silence. But it didn't hurt anymore. It reminded her of who she had been and how far she had come. Lydia had tried to break her, but instead, she had sparked something fierce and enduring. Nora had lost a dress, but she had found her power. And every time she stepped through the front door of her home, she smiled, knowing that no one, no matter how cruel, could ever take away what was truly hers.